Good day to you. This is Galactic on a Saturday, and this evening, Pacific Daylight Time at 7 p.m. this Saturday, just a few hours from now, actually 2 hours and 20 minutes from now, I will be beginning a live stream broadcast, which I've been promising to some of my listeners in the past for going on 2 years now. It has been technologically a bit out of reach due to my finances, which don't always permit a broadband connection, which is much more expensive than a Wi-Fi connection. And you can't do live stream with a Wi-Fi connection, although it has been tried, and it has been tried successfully. I, of course, fully reviewed that. It kind of worked, but the quality was so erratic, as was actually predicted in the sources that I consulted. Mostly Reddit and Quora, which are amazing. It's like the Men in Black, looking in like National Enquirer or some weird magazine. Way in the back is just a newsprint rag. They're looking at the personal section because they're looking for aliens. Anybody seen any UFOs around here? That's what the Men in Black look for. Well, that's similar to what goes on here, I think, because science is really a morass. It's a Sargasso Sea of calculus and complex numbers. Just to review, as I go into a somewhat off-the-cuff and impromptu introduction to the live stream, which, I mean, I do consider this to be quite significant, but I've learned not to get my hopes too high, because there's a repercussion when it's like you put yourself out there and just boom. Well, there's a sort of a depression where there had been potential. And David Bohm talks about potential energy in the universe. It is potential from one aspect, and of course it does occur in many equations. But what I did want to mention to you, just as sort of an overview of the philosophy of science, which is at the top of the charts right now since we don't have any choice but to philosophize. That is actually part of the natural process of science. But if you go to learn something, I'll just say the way that I was trained throughout school is to go to the library. I used to go to Stanford and get passes into their stacks to do research. You catch up. You catch up. Well then, if you're unfortunate enough as I was, I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, 16 years ago I got interested in astronomy in a way that was hands-on. I got a telescope. I started making a database. I studied stars, galaxies, clusters of galaxies, superclusters, 1960s, 1950s. Just go back, Mount Wilson, Mount Palomar. Go back to, the guy in Ireland. I still get, you did astronomy in Dublin. Yes, well, just outside of Dublin, Lord Parsons. And there was Herschel and his sister, who was equally interesting to study, so I became immersed. I became an astronomer. It just happens by some sort of, I don't know, it just seems like, it seems improbable looking back, but it seemed natural. You just grow, you just learn about more names and objects and relations, and then finally, about 5 years ago, I got interested in perfecting what I had been studying, which was spherical rotations, because I was making maps of the galaxies. But you see, I'm always at the fringe. I wasn't making maps of where the galaxies are. I was trying to make maps of galaxy clusters. So you actually need to do spherical rotations to do that if you want to capitalize on all of the databases of knowledge, which are generally given in equatorial coordinates projected on the sky. Well, I could just tell you an inside scoop on galactic astronomy, which I am a galactic astronomer. You need to translate the equatorial coordinates because it doesn't really make sense in deep space, although it is equivalent. So Euler showed that you can do a single rotation to get your Earth coordinate. You just rotate. That's a projection onto the sky of the Earth's equator. That's geocentric. Well, you can do the same thing, but you do have to choose a frame of reference, obviously. Well, you don't want it to be the center of the Earth, or really it's the center of it's the barycenter of the solar system. You project out that way. Well, no, you're on Earth. There are even supercomputers you can do that, but it's still the same thing. You've just moved like such a tiny fraction of anything. It doesn't make any difference. You're projecting onto the sky from the whole solar system. It doesn't really matter where in there, because it's all pretty much indistinguishably the same compared with where the galaxies are. Well, of course you want to use the galactic center. Well, we discovered it. We know exactly we know how far away it is. The center, really the gravitational center of our galaxy. Well, that's several kiloparsec off. So that's a significant shift in orientation. Because now among the galaxies, you're using your own Via Láctea. Oh, Via Láctea, I would say often in my early lectures. Via Láctea is the preferred way of saying the name of our galaxy among the galaxies. Don't say Milky Way. That is the projection of the band we see from Earth. It is accurate, but it's from within. Don't you want to see the whole thing? Well, then you call it Via Láctea. You know what it means? Milky Way. So, there's a lot of irony. Oh, it's fun. There's stories. These scientists are human. You want to know about them. Einstein, the astronomers, Zwicky, my teacher, Arp, my other teacher. So I got interested in not really even, well, not stars. Because once I saw a galaxy, I'll spend my time with the galaxies, thank you very much. Unbelievably beautiful. A blue-white spiral galaxy seen face on is unforgettable. I've seen thousands of these photographs. I've cried. I made a collage that I put out on the internet, and it did get a few views, but nobody knew how to find it. It was just a collage of photographs of interacting galaxies, just single galaxies that are just perfect. Just a sea of stars, and you can just see, like, fog. Maybe it's just stardust. It's just endless. You just look at, you see the scale, you lose your mind. Oh, many times, most pleasurable experience of my life in that sense. You just lose your mind in this sea of stars, just infinite. You just, if you're religious, you're in transport. Oh, definite there. But I didn't stop there, because my teacher, Fritz Zwicky, had discovered the third cosmic unit. There are stars, they're everywhere. There's galaxies, well, they're everywhere, and all the stars are in galaxies. Well, are galaxies collected into groups? They sure are. They're called clusters of galaxies. Now, I renamed them in my classificational system, because the galaxies used to be called nebulae. Even my teacher, well, actually, this was Hubble. Hubble, to the end of his life, called them nothing but nebulae. He even wrote a book which is a must-read if you wanted, forget mysteries, spy novels, or anything else. You want to read The Realm of the Nebulae. And in modern language, it might even be retranslated from English to English as The Realm of the Galaxies. Oh, it's tough reading after the first chapter, but the first chapter is just must-read. I tried getting through it, I'll be honest. These guys are mathematicians, okay? So, can't read everything they write, has been my experience. I'm a little slow when it comes to mathematics. Actually, arithmetic. I just never really... I'm not at the top of the list with mathematics. Let's just leave it at that. But spherical rotations, I was a programmer, and you need to do a spherical rotation to reorient. So you're using galactic coordinates. So that's how I got involved with the sphere. It's just the most natural thing in the world if you're trying to draw maps of clusters of galaxies, which I renamed cumuli. Hey, nebulae, cumuli. So that's the third cosmic unit. I never did give you the whole list. After the clusters of galaxies, which are about 100 to 1,000, and on the average, about 300 bright galaxies make a cluster, and they're distinct. Fritz discovered this. My teacher got this. He's also the discoverer of dark matter. One of the most interesting problems ever faced, because they thought it was gravity. Everyone thought that spiral galaxies are based on gravity. Well, I made a major discovery. You kind of got it wrong, because the flat plate spin proves it's not gravity. Well, what is it? It's electromagnetism, of course, because every spiral galaxy is born from a quasar explosion. And if it's black when it explodes, it turns into a quasar. So that is the morphology and actually the evolution from a black hole, which is apparently a real thing, because then it turns into the most unbelievable object ever encountered by the mind or sight of man. It's not a star. And it's so much brighter than a star, it's called a quasar. And we've discovered millions of them. And that was not known in the day of Zwicky. By the time of ARP, it was just about to be discovered. It took a long time to discover because no one knew what it was. Kind of like a galaxy. Well, that is one of the cosmic units, but it doesn't fit into the sequence because stars make galaxies, galaxies make clusters of galaxies. Is there something beyond that? There is just one thing beyond that, but it involves a split that I discovered, which is obvious, but nobody ever points it out, because as I pointed out in science, especially anything to do with the heavens, you've got a second voice, a second opinion on what you're seeing. So I encountered that school of thought. It's called a model. And that really shattered me. For a long time, I was practically paralyzed. Although I kept working, now my mind was split. Because everything that I read that had been discovered had been misinterpreted systematically, just like the history of man back to his origin, or the history of the ecology back to its origin. You'll never find out the answer to either of those mysteries because you'll be blocked. Their sins have ascended up to heaven. It's a group mind of man that makes this entity, which has several names depending on how you look at that entity, but it's the same entity that forms governments. It's also the same entity that controls religious societies. It rises somewhat by itself, the group mind of man. After one generation of a pooling of full-grown male minds, you have got a split. A split that goes back to the beginning of science. And today, that split is so obvious that it must be faced. So I was approaching the cosmic units from the point of view of really, I wanted to rely on my previous scientists for information, but then I discovered I had to start reading between the equations. Accretion. It does help explain, we think, according to the current model of solar system organization, that it must be due to accretion, that a star is born. I don't think that can be denied. There is some accretion. You would have to assume so if it's getting denser and denser until it bursts into thermonuclear flame. That is the current model for how a star is born. I do not argue that. I really don't know enough about stellar astronomy or astrophysics to even comment. But as for the galaxies, accretion is still the current model, and they are governed by gravity. Obviously, gravity and accretion go together. So the current and only, I want to emphasize this, the current and only model, which is an extended theory. A model is an extension of one or more theories. You must be very careful doing that, because if you're building on a theory, you might be enticed to forget that that's what you did, and so you never go back to question the theory. And if further evidence comes up showing that your original predicate theories were inaccurate or flat out disprovable, then you may have a problem with your model. That exactly describes astrophysics today, and really for a century. I won't go into that now because this is meant to be a lighthearted introduction to our live stream presentation tonight, which will run for an indefinite period of time, yes. Because I want to give people a chance to participate and ask questions or say whatever they want. So in that vein, without completing my story of how I got into spherical geometry, which is remarkably puissant, learn a French word inherited to English, puissant, means powerful. A powerful model. And it replaces Euclidean linear geometry, but it can't completely replace it, because if you can't convert back to the linear system, you can't compute your geometry. That's what balked the Greeks. We should have solved it by now, I must confess, knowing what I know. Somebody should have noticed. Maybe you don't start with a line. Maybe you start with a circle. The line is a planar object by definition. Well, there's only one other object. It's not a triangle or a square or any polygon. I was saying polyhedron. I couldn't remember the word polygon a few presentations back. But these are polygonal shapes, which are, of course, are composed of lines. The axiomatic basis of the plane must not be linear. But it does have to reconstitute the two linear dimensions, which are the numeric dimensions, because all numbers are on a line. So when you have two lines that are orthogonal, you get all of modern mathematics based on the right angle law, called the Pythagorean theorem. Well, that's simple and it's worked, but it's superpositional. You can axiomatize the plane to a circular space that matches our visual perceptual space. That transmutes on a known fixed constant mathematical relationship to the definition of a sphere. That reconstitutes volume space, so you don't make Einstein's error. It's actually everybody's error, but I like to say Einstein's error because, of course, he began with 3D. That meant he could only get a pure linear solution. I got the integral solution into a component space, which is what the circular space is. So that sums up my discovery. That led into a 3-year adventure, which now terminates on my 1000th video, after which I might disappear. I'm at 994 now. I only have 6 videos to go, and if I do it this month, which seems certain, then I will have produced 1000 science videos in 3 years. So that's your little professor here for whatever I'm worth. I am known as the professor, and in context throughout my life, I always just get this. I always thought that that was the strangest, but it beats some names that I've gotten, which of course in youth are fanciful. You got to appreciate, even if it's Lumpy, you know, Pigpen, whatever your name is, your nickname that your buddies give you, of course in youth, it's going to maybe not meet your requirements for a nickname. You don't want to be known as that. Too bad. It's love. It's all good. But, you know, there are challenges in life, yeah. Well, my challenge was in looking up the cosmological principle, looking up the cosmological constant when I studied the Einstein field equation so I could finally understand it. That took me a while, by the way. But if you want to actually understand the Einstein field equation mathematically, there is exactly one person who can do so that I found. It's a 3-hour sequence by a presenter on YouTube who's still around. He's from England. Dr. Physics A. It's Dr. Physics, one word, A, part of the word, just one word. Dr. Physics A. Dr. Physics A. I saw that 3-hour sequence twice. I thought I got it the first time, but I was very, very happy that I watched it a second time, because it was the second time I watched the same sequence all the way through. I realized I had kind of gotten it, But when I saw that sequence, then I knew what Einstein had done. He invented hypercalculus. I don't know if anyone has ever said that way, but Einstein discovered hypercalculus. Now, Paul Dirac, another one of my heroes, he made the greatest breakthrough in quantum mechanics until David Bohm. And by the way, Einstein said that David Bohm was his successor, and that's on record. It's in more than one place. It's confirmed. Einstein said that only David understands the quantum situation well enough to carry on in Einstein's name. He gave his full blessing and died frustrated because he was looking for those answers too. David Bohm actually got it. Dirac did not. In the same way that Einstein just slightly missed with a linear, because if you're constrained to linear construction, you simply won't get it. You need two componency. That's what I proved in 2022. That's when I began this series to present my geometry. But the reason I started this series was for at least 3 reasons. You should know those as we prepare for live stream, which was one of my long-term goals. And now I have achieved it. It's tested successfully, and I do have broadband, although it's caused me to tighten my belt in other areas. So this is a major fulfillment of my original dream in going to YouTube, which was quite a decision. I'm extremely private. I do not want to be known. I never wanted to be known, except, I mean, the injunctions of heaven are not ones that you want to overlook. So I did spend 30 years studying the Southwest Semitic scripture collection called the Holy Bible. And I mastered it. It takes a while. It's quite a book with quite a few adventures involved in trying to figure out what the Bible is, means, in any way. But I became fascinated because I'm a database manager, and I tend to be a very quick study in structure. And I quickly realized that there was something that kept coming up in Scripture that appeared to be the key to the whole system of books, which covers, is about 2,000 years at the least. And you say, what about the extension into modern times? I'm willing to talk about that, but it's not really science. But it does involve what I used to do. What is it that it seemed to me to be the key to the Bible? Many men have thought they found a key or a system of addressing the Bible that would bring it into perspective, give it some relational, what is it saying? Well, I noticed that over 6,000 times, I used lexicons. I wore out these giant concordances. I used to use Young's and Strong's at the same time, filled with notations. These are huge, thick lexical books of just cross-references to scriptures based on the words, and you can look them up in the original. And I was doing that already, certainly in studying the wisdom books, because I wanted to know what certain words meant in the wisdom books, of which there are officially 5, I believe. But I studied wisdom. I was very attracted to the Bible wisdom. But the whole Bible, you want to know, well, that kind of fits into a greater whole, right? Yes. The Tanakh is what the Yudi called it. And that's a perfectly reasonable term. It's really a bunch of books strung together, beginning with Genesis and ending somewhere else. After which comes Yeshua HaMashiach, after which there's a flurry of activity called the New Covenant Scriptures. Now, of course, I studied those two all the way to the Apocalypse, which balked me decade after decade after decade. I had a way of addressing the entire book, including the New Covenant, based on the holy name of God. It's the one called the Lord, all caps, the Lord. Well, that was the name of the God of Israel, and he's called that. And God actually said, you can call me that. So what is that in Hebrew? I wanted to know what that name was in Hebrew. And of course I'm joining churches at this time only for what I'd ever cared about their doctrine. That some angel just whispered it out. Don't worry about their doctrine. That's not why you're here. It was to hang around with other people that wanted to talk about the Bible so I could get leads from men who were older than me and or at least were in touch with what I knew nothing of, which is how have other men interpreted this book. Eventually I got hold of Adam Clark, who's exhaustive. I even was acquainted with Delitzsch and many of the others, but they really weren't helping me because I had already found the key to the Bible. It's that name. And I consulted Yeshua to see if anybody wrote anything down that he said. And sure enough, that's all he talked about. Yeshua only talked on two subjects. He talked about heaven, which of course is, I'm an astronomer, so heaven, no, he meant it. That's where he ended up. He's in heaven now, so that's real. He talked about heaven, a lot about heaven. An enormous amount about heaven. And I should say there's three things he talked about. Well, there's more, but I'm showing you the keys that I found that guided me into some perspective or orientation, because you have to have that if you're me. I need structure. What is it? Well, it turns out that requires a lot of work. As I knew, this happy work is like, it's nothing but blessing to me. That's why I studied it for over 3 decades. Closer to 4. Or if you continue it to now, 5. Which I've never really... Well, the past 10 years I haven't really gotten into scripture because I've been into deep space science, the study of heaven. So what else did Yeshua talk about besides heaven? The name of his Father. He always redirected to his Father. Said, why do you call me good? Hey, good master. It was meant well, but Yeshua felt it was time, for the sake of anyone listening, why do you call me good? There's only one who's good. Well, there goes the divinity thing. The whole thing about Christ's divinity is a red herring. It's angels on a pinhead sort of talk. He talked about his Father's name. Well, that's what I had been studying. I was studying that in the Old Testament. 6,800 times. L-O-R-D. When it's not capitalized, according to the convention used in the current King James system, of translating from Hebrew, for instance, it has to be spelled differently, and many of the newer Bible translations have a prologue where it just discusses their convention for translating the many names of God. Oh, there are quite a few. But there's only one. One ring to find them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the brightness of heaven bind them. Kind of the takeoff on Tolkien there, but one name to bind them all, one name to find them, or whatever. And in the glorious light of eternal heaven, bind the names together into one. Echad. Hear, O Israel, our Lord, all caps, is Echad. He's unity. Unity. In whom we live and move and have our being. Do you think that applies in astronomy and astrophysics and science in general? If you get that far, yes. And that will be the end of your search, because there's nothing higher than that, although I shouldn't say that. I'm a little man on a little planet with a brief lifespan, but while I've been here, I've seen the moon, I've looked at the planets, the stars, I've seen the galaxies, I've gone beyond, I was entranced. I was a lunatic, you know, that's the old word for the moon man. Ah, well, they sometimes stepped foot on the moon. You saw Apollo 13? Yeah. Tom Hanks? Look at the moon, and then he pees, and he has a urinary tract infection. It's killing him. That actually, I'm mixing up 2 movies, but you get the idea. That does occur after the explosion. They barely got back. It's an unbelievable story. You got to see that movie. The other one is Shawshank Redemption, so Tom Hanks was in that too, and he had a urinary tract infection, where the big black man sent from heaven grabbed him, for which he could have been shot, and healed him, which is quite a scene to see. And then he came back and talked to the big black man who had miraculous gifts from heaven and said, "My wife wants to thank you. Apparently your healing worked better than..." Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that could happen. So anyhow, the whole thing with the deep outer space, why are we talking about the universe, which is so far beyond it? We don't even know where the edge is. It's because we know a lot of structure. Well, about the same time we discovered this, it was no more than a century ago, all this explosion, we know that, oh my goodness, there's a whole universe, it's not all stars. So the fourth cosmic unit is the cosmic web. At one time, superclusters, those are nexal points in a polyhedral system, which, as you can tell by my word, is actually linear. So God knows, or I mean the creator of the universe, knows all about linearity, but only at the highest level. Oh, not so. When a black hole explodes, it sends out a double lightsaber. You saw the sequels to Star Wars. The double lightsaber. That's a bipolar electromagnetic explosion of a supermassive black hole. And that's the birth of a galaxy. There's a timing issue that I studied for a very long time. And I couldn't publish, but I did write 2 books. Because by then, I was well on my way to quantum mechanics. I was afraid of quantum. Every time I saw the word quantum mechanics, I was repelled by the very notion. So I knew nothing about it until the campfire, which destroyed my life's work. Was it a calamity to me? I must admit that it didn't really affect me. That's a Frank Flynn joke, by the way, which I laughed at hysterically, because Frank is a good joke teller. One reason I love the guy, Frank. God, I wish I could see Frank again. Feck me. It didn't. Oh, my God. So I do like to be a cut-up. I'm a comedian. I've known several naturally comedic people. There's only one who rules. And that's a guy named Sinbad the Sailor. Oh, wait. The chess-playing pirate. This is his favorite, so I'm just repeating a absolute here. That's frickin' genius. No, he was always the best. Always the best. I got a nickname from him that I hated so bad, because everyone else caught on and they just knew that it irritated me, and they must have been only subliminally aware why. Because the term is very rarely used except by a miller. So it was a bona fide nickname, but I'm not even going to say it, but it's in Revelation. And I knew this man was a Bible. Certainly, when I caught him reading Chronicles, I knew, oh no, he's religious. I was not at the time, but I would be within a few months. And so began many of my aspects on my person, my persona, actually it's called the idiosyncrasy, when you combine all the characteristics of some personality into a giant thing. Persona doesn't really do it, but idiosyncrasy, that makes sense to me, because he uses idio. And I'm like, idio? I'm already attentive. That probably applies to me. Oh, yeah. All that means is just identity, so it's harmless. But anyway, I'd like to tell stories. I'm a cut-up. I may make a lot of jokes tonight. In just about 2 hours, let's see, how long do we have to go? Less than 2 hours. So I need to freshen up, get ready for my first official live stream broadcast. Although it was tested, I even got one guy chatting. He asked me a question. He made a statement. Yeah, I totally agree with your comments about a guy I won't name, EW. It was like, we won't go into that. Oh, there's 2 sides to science. I hope I made that clear. But I can tell you this about my former life. You only live twice. I've definitely had 2 separate lives. Well, of course, they interleave and overlap. But I was a Bible scholar, really didn't want to have anything to do with science because I didn't like calculus. Fuck it. But the Bible, that I wanted to know more about. And I pursued deciphering the Tetragrammaton, which is that name that first occurs in Toledoth 0, Genesis 1. I told you I'm a full-fledged Bible scholar, so I will talk gobbledygook because I know what it means, and I have this human propensity to just like talk down to you because it makes me feel great. That's not true, but it is there, okay? I'm just saying I'm aware of that. Well, I tried to figure it out, and I quickly realized that since it's a conjugation of the verb to be, probably had something to do with to cause to be, which turns out to be the right answer, but it took me about another 20 years to just finally realize that's what it means. It means to cause to be. And the Jehovah's Witnesses did not know this. I used to have them over to my house, and there were more and more of them each time. My wife had just died. They were perfectly... I never had it. I like Christians. I know I say a lot about their systems of doctrine, but the people, I mean, they're trying. I don't know. You do have to be cautious, but Jehovah's Witnesses, I wanted to know what they knew because I was writing a book. I can only tell you it was kind of supernatural in some ways from my aspect because they just never, ever remembered what I had just got done saying. Which I found is actually a pattern among strong Protestant sects, which you need to be cautious with because they do have a doctrine. And then you'll find out that's all they're thinking about. Is that these Jehovah's Witnesses were there not to listen to a fucking word I said unless it was a scream of help from Jesus. Other than that, they were there to teach me, to correct me, whatever I was wrong about, which would be everything except what they knew. And I just, I wanted to know what I asked them. What do you think about the Tetragrammaton? Whatever I see, I seem to have deduced this. What do you think? You never remember that I said anything except they asked me a question which their doctrine says they have to answer. So they always tried to explain to me what it means from their point of view, and I kept asking questions. Obvious, I didn't really understand what they were saying, so it was mutual. We just didn't understand each other. So eventually they stopped coming. It's not like I kicked them out. But one day I did challenge them when there were about 7 of them there. We always got along. It was great. I always offered them refreshments knowing they'd refuse since they're in the house of a Gentile. I swear that, although I shouldn't, really don't know. I don't care. I only cared about getting knowledge from them and being a good host. So they'd sit there while I'm sipping tea or whatever. They're not having anything. Fine. So I said, last week there were like 5 of you over, and I see a couple of you here again. They actually all were there, but I was trying to be humble. Because what I had to say, I didn't really want to say. I have told you what I have deduced about the Tetragrammaton, and I tell you every time I bring it up, every time, it's been weeks now, none of you can remember a word. I didn't say goddamned word, because I'm a diplomat. I wanted to say that. I was emotional, but I was not hateful. I'm like, what I was saying was, do you think maybe you might become aware of that and not feel threatened, but just maybe pay a little more attention to what I'm saying? No! And so I told him, well, I don't know what I said, but it was not positive. It was more like giving up, like, well, then I just like threw up my hands in a way. It's like, I guess that's it then. And then they like eventually left and never came back because they didn't want to argue that. In other words, they couldn't wait to get away from me. And so I was merciful. So, well, I didn't say get out or I'll release the hounds, which would have been to call over the 2 giant stallions. that lived on my property and just say, chew them up. Just get them with your hooves before they can reach their cars. No! But they never came back, and it's probably for the best. I think that's what they needed. I helped. I think we're done here. You're not listening to me, and what you say makes no sense. So, there you go. So I hope you tune in tonight. That's 40 minutes. I have to freshen up, food, and a shower. It's very important. You always want to look your best if you're a presenter of any kind. That's your very best. Comb your mustache. I don't care what you have to do. Clip the hairs that are anywhere. And look your best. No snuff under the lip. You can tell I have a habit, okay? Because I can't smoke. My mother smoked when I was in her womb, so if you're compassionate on humanity in general, you're going to cut me a break here. We're going to learn science from a man who looks like he should be at a southern barbecue hawking loogies 30 feet in a contest. I'm an American. I have rights. Now, before God, I do have to appear. So, I do trust. It's like, it's filthy. So I won't have tobacco, and most likely. I can't predict that since I'm an addict, so I don't know. I will violate any vow in order to continue my habit, just like anyone else. I've given up beer many times. It's not that I'm a hypocrite. It works for a few days. I return. It's like a dog to its vomit. Like a dog to its vomit, just, I guess I'll go back there. That's where I get pleasure. Blickety-glick, gee whiz. Oh, hey, the wisdom books. You got to understand, wisdom is not going to play patty cake with you, okay? All right, so keep looking up. We'll be back this evening. Hope to see you at the live stream where you can ask me questions. Confrontation, I expect that. Just be polite. In a science discussion, you're not supposed to be emotional. I mean, we're not Vulcans, although that's not a bad role model. But you just don't get involved in emotion. Now, that's impossible. So let's not be like the Jehovah's Witnesses. Let's keep an open mind. That's really part of a scientist's. You have to accept all evidence if you're trying to be truthful. Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Well, nothing but the truth and the truth is kind of the same, but the whole truth, you're going to need to listen to me in order to be able to even do that, because I'll teach you how to tell the whole truth. You're going to have to know a few logical principles that apparently I'm the only man willing to teach, and that will make you a fisherman rather than give you a bushel of fish. So see you tonight, I hope. And thank you for tuning in. It means a lot to me. Just knowing I'm not exaggerating. After I produce, and it's been close to 1,000 times now, I look for days at the number of views and am perpetually disconcerted by, like, very, very low numbers. Some of my commentators have said, I can't understand why you're not more famous. And that means a lot to me, too. So, hope to see you then.